Have you ever done smocking, darning, or even shell tucking on your projects? Those are just a few of the other stitching applications that you can find on the Brother NV180. And that is today's topic on Sewing Saturday. As a sewing beginner, we sometimes get confused with so many tips and tutorials online. And I'm glad to introduce you to our newest sewing video series featuring the easiest tips and tricks that I wish I learned when I started sewing. It's Julius again from Sew It's Your Style, and welcome to Sewing Saturday, where we teach you how to become a better sewer. From tips and tricks, all the way to making your very first project. Join us today as we explore the basics of sewing. Friends and folks, we all know that there is so much more that we can do with our sewing machines, especially the Brother NV180, the machine that I have right here. This combo machine is capable of sewing, quilting, and most importantly, embroidering, which we all love. But speaking of other stitching applications, in the next 2 episodes of Sewing Saturday, I will be showing you 3 different stitching applications that you will love and probably make use of on your projects. And today is all about the smocking stitch. You may have heard about the smocking stitch or probably seen one on ready-made garments. It's an embroidery technique used to gather fabric so that it can stretch long before elastic sewing has been introduced, as well as the stretchy fabrics of today. Smocking is often used commonly on cuffs, necklines, and bodices of garments where buttons are undesirable to be put into. And did you know that the smocking stitch technique has already been in practice since the Middle Ages, around 5th to the 15th century? And back then, sewing machines didn't exist yet. So everything has to be made tediously by hand, which could take weeks or even months to complete a garment. And that is why clothing in those periods is so valuable that it could take years before people can finally decide on a total change of wardrobe. Not unless you're Elizabeth I, super wealthy, who owns hundreds and hundreds of elaborate court gowns. Nowadays, smocking doesn't have to be fully done by hand. Although it requires a little bit of manual work, the NV180 can produce smocking stitches that will make people think they're sewn by your own delicate hands. This decorative stitch is created by stitching or embroidering over gathers. As you may already know, this is used to decorate the front of blouses or cuffs. And aside from that, the smocking stitch adds texture and elasticity on fabrics. So this process has 2 main steps. First is by creating rows of basting stitches along the width of the fabric. The basting stitch is then pulled to create gathers on the fabric. And the second step is by embroidering over the gathers to create that elaborate smocking stitch. Let me show you how it's done. It's super fun and super easy. We will begin by attaching the presser foot J onto the sewing machine. For this example, we will use a plain piece of fabric just for demonstration. We will select the straight stitch and it will be adjusted to a stitch length of 4.0. Then we will loosen the thread tension to about 1.5 to 2 on the sewing machine. This process is what every sewer or dressmaker does to gather fabrics, and this is called basting. It's a temporary stitch used to either hold 2 pieces of fabric or to create markings on the fabric. Using our fabric, we will then sew parallel rows of stitching at 1 cm intervals. If you are not confident eyeballing the distance of the stitching, You can mark the fabric using a marking pen to create rows of stitching lines. 1 centimeter is about 3/8 of an inch. Now here is an important tip when creating gathers using the basting stitch. It is necessary to draw the bobbin threads first. This will be tucked behind the machine, leaving about a few inches of tail. This will ensure that we will be able to pull our threads easier. Once we have sewn parallel lines of stitching, we will then pull the bobbin threads. Now it is important to remember that the bobbin threads are the lines of stitching created underneath the fabric. Always remember to pull the bobbin thread and not the needle or top thread. When pulling the gathers, it is important to stroke the gathers to create an even and smooth finish. We will pull the threads ever so slightly, or just halfway through just to create small gathers. At this stage, we have created our gathers, which is our first main step. You can create as many basting stitch as you would like, depending on your project. Our second and final step is to sew or stitch between the straight lines using the built-in smocking stitch on the Brother NV180. The smocking stitch has 3 different variations on this machine, and you can use any of them on your projects. Position the fabric so that the needle drops between 2 straight stitches. When doing this, it is important that you don't stretch out the fabric while sewing, as it will remove the gathers that you worked on so hard and you'll only end up with a flat piece of fabric. We will sew smocking stitches in between all of the straight stitches. Once done, we will once again pull more of the straight or the basting stitches to create more gathers. This will result into a more gathered and elastic fabric. You might have already noticed this technique in some of the ready-to-wear garments. Smocking is an ideal way to create a stretchy style of fabric. Plus, it creates a decorative vibe on your projects or garments. You can do this on the cuffs, necklines, or even the bodices of your garments. The smocking is one of the many stitching applications that you can find on the Brother NV180. And as you build your knowledge about sewing and you get to know more about your sewing machine, the more confident you will be to tackle on more complicated projects. I hope that you enjoyed today's simple and easy tutorial on the smocking stitch. This is it for now. We will be exploring more stitching applications on the next episode of Sewing Saturday.